Arsène Lupin vs. Herlock Sholmes, Episode 1, The Detective in the Mirror. Welcome back, Detective. After witnessing Arsène Lupin's triumph of honor over wealth, you might think we've seen the height of his legend. But today begins a new chapter, one where our gentleman burglar faces an adversary unlike any before. Not a police inspector, not a security system, but a mind that rivals his own. Prepare yourself for the ultimate intellectual duel. Master Thief versus Master Detective. Are you ready to witness genius clash with genius? Picture this. March 1908, London. The Times publishes a scathing editorial that sends shockwaves across the English Channel. France's Arsène Lupin, criminal or myth? While French police bungle about chasing shadows, England's greatest detective, Herlock Sholmes, has offered to solve the Lupin problem in under a fortnight. One wonders if France's pride can withstand being rescued by British intellect once again. The article is pure provocation, obviously designed to ignite national rivalry. But here's what troubles me. Lupin has spent 3 years building his legend of invincibility. Every detective who's challenged him has failed spectacularly. Why would this British detective, however brilliant, succeed where Ganimard and dozens of others have failed? Unless this Sholmes is something entirely different. Let me introduce you to Herlock Sholmes, detective. Imagine Sherlock Holmes, but more theatrical, more confident, more absolutely certain of his deductive powers. Tall and angular, with piercing eyes that seem to read your entire life history from a glance at your shoes. He lives at 219 Parker Street with his companion, Dr. Wilson. And his reputation for solving impossible cases is legendary throughout Europe. But here's the crucial detail. Sholmes isn't just brilliant, he's arrogant about his brilliance. He publicly dismisses Lupin as a common criminal, elevated by French incompetence and journalistic exaggeration. Give me his case files for one evening, and I'll have him in custody by breakfast. Think about this attitude, my apprentice. What happens when absolute confidence meets equally absolute cunning? The French government, humiliated by the Times article, secretly invites Sholmes to Paris. Not officially, that would be too embarrassing, but through private channels, offering a substantial reward if he can accomplish what French police cannot: capture or definitively unmask Arsène Lupin. Sholmes accepts with characteristic confidence. Finally, a challenge worthy of my methods. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The day after Sholmes arrives in Paris, the Baron d'Hautrec, no relation to Lupin's previous disguise, reports an unusual burglary. Nothing was stolen. Instead, something was left behind. In his private study, placed prominently on his desk, sits an envelope addressed simply, "For Herlock Sholmes." With compliments. Inspector Ganimard brings this to Sholmes immediately, and I'm present as an observer when the detective opens it. Inside is an elegant calling card reading Arsène Lupin, gentleman burglar, and a handwritten note. "Dear Mr. Sholmes, welcome to Paris. I've read about your remarkable deductive abilities in the London papers. How thrilling to finally have an opponent worthy of my attention. Shall we play a game? I will commit a crime, you will attempt to solve it. May the best mind win." Your future adversary, A.L. Sholmes, reads this with a slight smile. How predictable. The criminal, feeling threatened by my presence, attempts psychological warfare through theatrical gestures. Classic displacement behavior indicating deep-seated anxiety. But notice something, detective, is Lupin really anxious, or is he doing exactly what he does best, setting the stage for his performance? The note continues with specific details. To make our game sporting, I'll provide advance notice. On March 15th, at precisely 3 p.m., I will steal the blue diamond from Madame Valerand's townhouse on Avenue Henry Martin. You have 5 days to prepare your defenses. I do hope you'll make it challenging. P.S. I've studied your methods extensively. Your monograph on tobacco ash identification was particularly enlightening. Think about this challenge. We've seen Lupin announce crimes before. But this time, he's not just warning the victim. He's directly challenging a detective who's never failed to solve a case. Why give such specific information to someone with Sholmes's abilities? What advantage could Lupin possibly gain from this transparency? Sholmes springs into action with impressive energy. He visits Madame Valerand's townhouse, examining every entrance, every window, every possible access point. He interviews the servants, studies their backgrounds, checks their references. He maps the surrounding streets, notes nearby buildings, calculates sight lines and escape routes. His methods are meticulous, scientific, brilliant. The criminal will enter through the servants' entrance, Sholmes announces after 3 days of investigation. Disguised as a tradesman making a delivery. He'll use a duplicate key obtained by bribing or replacing one of the household staff, most likely the junior footman whose recent spending exceeds his salary. The theft will occur during Madame Valerand's afternoon social hour, when the staff is distracted serving tea. Elementary Ganymede is impressed despite his jealousy. Your deductions seem flawless, Mr. Sholmes. How can we prevent this? Sholmes's response reveals his confidence. We don't prevent it, Inspector. We allow Lupin to commit his crime exactly as planned, then arrest him in the act. I'll be hidden inside the study, having deduced his precise method. When he reaches for the diamond, I'll emerge and you'll have your famous thief in custody. But I notice something troubling. Sholmes's deductions, while brilliant, all assume Lupin operates conventionally, that he'll use standard burglary methods, rely on inside help, follow logical criminal procedure. Yet, we've seen Lupin transcend convention repeatedly. What if his methods don't match Sholmes's deductive framework? What if genius lies not in solving puzzles but in making the puzzles irrelevant? March 15th arrives. Sholmes positions himself behind a false panel in Madame Valerand's study, with perfect view of the safe containing the blue diamond. Ganimard stations 20 officers throughout the house and surrounding streets, all in plain clothes. The servants have been warned. The junior footman is under surveillance. Every entrance is watched. The trap is perfect. 3 p.m. arrives. Exactly on schedule. Nothing happens. Then 3:05, 3:10, 3:15. No suspicious tradesman. No junior footman making unusual moves. No signs of intrusion whatsoever. Madame Valerand is safely at her social hour in the drawing room, surrounded by guests and servants. The diamond remains locked in its safe. At 3:30 p.m., Madame Valerand returns to her study to retrieve some documents for her guests. She opens the safe herself, using her personal key, and the blue diamond is gone. In its place sits another calling card. Thank you for the lovely diamond, Madame. My apologies for the inconvenience. Chaos erupts. Sholmes emerges from his hiding place, utterly baffled. Impossible. I've watched this safe for an hour. No one entered this room except Madame Valerand herself. Ganimard frantically questions the servants, searches the house, interrogates the footman, but the diamond has vanished, stolen under the noses of Europe's greatest detective and 20 police officers. Here's where your analytical skills matter most. Apprentice, how did Lupin do it? The safe was locked. Only Madame Valerand has the key. Sholmes watched the room continuously, and the theft occurred exactly when Lupin promised. What method could bypass all these safeguards? The solution, when Sholmes finally deduces it, 3 days later, is both elegant and humiliating. Lupin never entered the house on March 15th at all. He'd broken in 2 weeks earlier, on March 1st, while Sholmes was still in London. He stole the diamond then and replaced it with a perfect replica. When Madame Valerand opened the safe on March 15th, she was looking at a fake that had been there for 2 weeks. But the genius goes deeper. Lupin knew Sholmes would focus all his attention on preventing the announced theft. By giving a specific date and time, he guaranteed everyone would watch that moment intensely, while completely ignoring the previous 2 weeks. The announcement wasn't a challenge, it was a distraction masquerading as a challenge. Even more brilliant, Lupin had an accomplice swap the fake diamond for his calling card during the social hour. While everyone focused on preventing the real theft, so the diamond was actually stolen 2 weeks early, but everyone experienced it as stolen at exactly 3 p.m. as promised. Perception managed, reality manipulated, genius demonstrated. Sholmes takes this defeat with surprising grace, though his face shows humiliation. Clever, he exploited my assumption that announced crimes occur as announced. He weaponized my own deductive methods against me by feeding them false premises. But then his eyes harden with determination. However, Monsieur Lupin has made a critical error. He's revealed his methodology, using misdirection to hide the actual timing of crimes. I won't fall for such tricks again. That evening, both men received their next move in this intellectual chess game. Sholmes finds a letter at his hotel. Well played, Mr. Detective. You deduced my method eventually, though somewhat tardily. Shall we continue? The game is just beginning. Next challenge, coming soon. Your admiring opponent, A.L. and Lupin, receives a letter care of the Paris newspapers. Monsieur Lupin, your trick was indeed clever once, but magic tricks lose their power when the method is exposed. I've now calibrated my deductions to account for your misdirection techniques. You will find me a different opponent in our next encounter. The game, as you say, is just beginning. H. Sholmes. Think about these 2 letters, detective. 2 brilliant minds, each acknowledging the other's abilities, each confident in eventual victory. Sholmes believes he's learned to counter Lupin's methods. But Lupin has learned that Sholmes can deduce anything given time. Who has the real advantage in this duel? The newspapers explode with excitement. Lupin defeats famous British detective. Sholmes humiliated in first encounter, but more perceptive observers note that Sholmes's deductive abilities remain formidable. He did eventually solve the method, even if too late to prevent the theft. And Lupin, for the first time, faces an opponent who can actually unravel his schemes given sufficient time and information. Ganimard watches this intellectual warfare with mixed feelings. Finally, someone who can challenge Lupin, but also, France's humiliation is now international news. He approaches both men separately, asking each the same question. What happens next? Their answers reveal everything about this conflict. Sholmes, next. I stop playing defense and go on offense. Lupin has shown me his methods. Now, I'll use those methods to predict his next crime before he announces it, and be waiting when he arrives. The student has become the master. Lupin, next. I demonstrate that solving past crimes doesn't prevent future ones when the criminal understands the detective's thinking. Sholmes believes he's learned my patterns, but what if my pattern is having no pattern? What if I've been teaching him the wrong lessons? So tell me, apprentice, who has the advantage in this extraordinary duel? The detective who can deduce anything given time, or the thief who controls what information exists to be deduced? The hunter who learns from every encounter, or the prey who deliberately teaches false lessons? This opening gambit has established the fundamental dynamic. Sholmes represents pure analytical brilliance, believing every mystery has a logical solution. Lupin represents creative chaos, believing reality itself can be manipulated to make logic irrelevant. When irresistible analysis meets immovable deception, something has to give. As Parisians gossip about the Battle of Titans, both men prepare their next moves. Sholmes studies Lupin's case, files obsessively, building a psychological profile, identifying patterns in apparently patternless crimes. Lupin studies Sholmes's published cases, learning the detective's deductive methods, finding the assumptions behind his brilliance. Join me next time for the first collision, where Sholmes attempts his first offensive move, predicting and preventing a Lupin heist before it happens. But can even perfect deduction overcome a criminal who's prepared for perfect deduction? When genius meets genius, the results are never predictable.